Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, classmates. We are the group 5, and today we are going to discuss to you the fifth ID model, which is about Vygotsky's Sociocultural theory of cognitive development, stages of moral development of Lawrence Kohlberg, theory of multiple intelligences by Gardner, and Erikson's stages of psychosocial development. I am Crystal Rose Gayoso, and I will going to discuss to you the first and the second part, and Janine Kodal will going to report about the third and the fourth part. Let's start. Vygotsky's Sociocultural theory of cognitive development. Vygotsky's cognitive development theory argues that cognitive abilities are socially guided and constructed. As such, culture serves as a mediator for the formation and development of specific abilities, such as learning, memory, attention, and problem solving. It is proposed that culture-specific tools plays an integral role in the way children organize and think about the world. Vygotsky's theory is comprised of concepts such as culture-specific tools, language and thought interdependence, and the zone of proximal development. Vygotsky's concept of zone and proximal development. Vygotsky is most recognized for his concept of zone of proximal development, or ZPD, pertaining to the cognitive development in children. According to the Vygotsky theory of cognitive development, children who are in the zone of proximal development for a particular task can almost perform the task interdependently, but not quite there yet. With a little help from certain people, they'll be able to perform the task successfully. Some factors that are essential in helping a child is in the zone of proximal development are the following. The presence of someone who has better skills in the task that the child is trying to learn. This someone is known as more knowledgeable other, or MKO, which we will going to discuss below. The child can receive instructions from the MKO during the learning process. For example, a 5-year-old girl knows how to ride a tricycle, but can't ride a bicycle with 2 wheels, unless his grandfather holds onto the back of her bike. According to Vygotsky's theory, this child is in the zone of proximal development for riding bicycle. With her grandfather's help, this little girl learns to balance her bike. After some practice, she can ride the bike on her own. Vygotsky's concept of zone of proximal development underscores Vygotsky's conviction that social influences, particularly getting instructions from someone, are of immense importance on the cognitive development in early childhood. According to Vygotsky's theory, as children are given instructions or shown how to perform certain tasks, they organize the new information received in their existing mental schemas. They use this information as guides on how to perform these tasks and eventually learn to perform them interdependently. Next is Vygotsky's concept of more knowledgeable other. Vygotsky's sociocultural theory emphasizes that children learn through social interaction that include collaborative and cooperative dialogue with someone who is more skilled in tasks they're trying to learn. Vygotsky called these people with higher skill level the more knowledgeable other, or MKO. MKO could be teachers, parents, tutors, and even peers. In our example of the 5-year-old girl learning to ride a bike, her grandfather not only holds into the back of the bike, but also verbally teaches her how to balance her bike. From the little girl's point of view, her grandfather is what Vygotsky would call a more knowledgeable other. Next is Vygotsky's concept of scaffolding. Vygotsky's concept of scaffolding is closely related to the concept of the zone of proximal development. Scaffolding refers to the temporary support given to a child by a more knowledgeable other that enables the child to perform a task until such a time that the child can perform these tasks independently. According to the Vygotsky's theory, scaffolding entails the changing the quality and the quantity of support provided to a child in the course of a teaching session. The MKO adjusts the level of guidance in order to fit the student's current level of performance. For novel tasks, the more knowledgeable other may utilize direct instruction. As a child gains more familiarity with a task and becomes more skilled at it, the more knowledgeable other may then provide less guidance. To illustrate Vygotsky's concept of scaffolding using our example of the 5-year-old learning to ride a bike, the little girl's grandfather, which is the more knowledgeable other, may begin by holding onto the back of her bike the whole time that she is on the bike. As the little girl gains more experience, her grandfather may release his hold intermittently. Eventually, the girl's grandfather only grabs the bike when he needs to correct her balance. When the girl finally masters the skill, her grandfather no longer needs to hold onto her bike anymore, and the scaffolds can be removed. A major contribution of Vygotsky's theory of cognitive development in children is the acknowledgement of the social component in both cognitive and psychosocial development. Due to Vygotsky's preferred ideas, research attention has been shifted from the individual onto larger interactional units such as parent and child, teacher and student, brother and sister, and etc. So how could we apply Vygotsky's sociocultural theory of cognitive development in instructional materials? A contemporary educational application of Vygotsky's theory is reciprocal teaching. It is used to improve students' ability to learn from text. Teachers and students collaborate in learning and practice the 4 key skills, which is summarizing, questioning, clarifying, and predicting. The teacher's role in the process is reduced over time. Also, Vygotsky's theory of cognitive development in learners is relevant to instructional concepts such as scaffolding and apprenticeship, in which a teacher or more advanced peer helps to structure or arrange a task so that a novice can work it successfully. Vygotsky's theories also feed into the current interest in collaborative learning, suggesting that group members should have different levels of ability so more advanced peers can help less advanced members operate within their zone of proximal development. Next up is The Stages of Moral Development by Lawrence Kohlberg. Lawrence Kohlberg is an American psychologist who created one of the most well-known ideas addressing some of these fundamental questions. His work refined and extended on Jean Piaget's previous work, but was more focused in describing how children develop moral thinking. Kohlberg's moral development theory is a study of how children develop or how children acquire morality and moral reasoning. According to Kohlberg's thesis, moral development develops in six stages. Moral logic, according to the theory, is primarily concerned with obtaining and sustaining justice. Kohlberg developed Piaget's theory by stating that moral development is a lifelong process. His theory divides moral development into six, from which each is divided into three levels. First stage is the pre-conventional, which consists of obedience and punishment orientation and self-interest orientation. In the first stage, children are more likely to have a pre-conventional degree of moral development. In this case, a moral action is judged largely in the direct repercussions that would befall the individual. In other words, judgments are made purely on the basis of the influence on the one making the decision, because the focus is on the direct consequences of an action to be committed. The first stage of moral formation is obedience and punishment oriented. When a person is punished for doing something, it is considered morally wrong. A child, for example, learns not to drink alcohol because he gets grounded if he does. The activity that generated a penalty is regarded especially awful when the punishment linked with it is more harsh than usual. The logic would prevent a child from engaging in any action that has previously resulted in direct negative repercussions for him. Another example is the man who stole a medication, the medication from a pharmacy. Okay. A child's reasoning to the example may include it as it's bad to steal or it's against the law without assessing the perspective of the man whose wife is sick. This stage is labeled pre-conventional due to the limited association that children have with the outlined principles. They view the ethics thought as something that society implements, not as something they internalize themselves. Second stage is about individualism and exchange. The second stage of moral development is self-interest driven, in which judgments are made based on what the individual believes is in his or her best interests, without regard for the influence on one's reputation or connections with others. At this point, a person's decisions are nearly wholly self-centered, with no consideration for others unless doing so will result in an action that benefits the person. A teenager, for example, may take lunch money from another kid at school. This raises his bank account balance, but at the expense of the child who will no longer be able to eat lunch. Workplace norms must be explicitly defined and strictly implemented when an adult has no progressed beyond the pre-conventional level of moral development. Furthermore, at this age, an adult's high level of self-centeredness makes them unsuited for management positions. Another example is the man who stole drugs from the pharmacy. Okay. They may reason that he may think that it is right to take the drug, but the pharmacist would not. The second stage relies heavily on the exchange of favors and can be summarized with the common marketing saying, "What's it in for me?" Children at this stage are not motivated by friendship or respect, but by the personal advantages involved. For example, if a parent asks their child to complete a chore around the house, the child may ask what the benefit would be to me or to them. Parents often recognizes the "you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours" mindset at this stage and offer a reward such as an allowance. Conventional morality, older children, adolescents, and most adults. The third stage is the conventional level. Both children and adults have the traditional level of moral development. Moral reasoning in this context refers to comparing one's behavior to society's view on what is right and wrong, even if there are no repercussions to following or not following such views. The desire to impress others is the primary motivator for making decisions. The third stage of moral development is characterized by interpersonal agreement and conformity, in which the individual is expected to follow social norms. At this point, the person tries to live up to others' expectations since he has learned that being seen as a nice person offers advantages. The person begins to examine the repercussions of an activity in terms of the impact on his relationships with others, which is reasonable outcome. For example, a person would avoid engaging in criminal behavior because getting caught might harm his family's reputation. In terms of our example above about the man who stole drugs from the pharmacy, the man should take the medicine from the pharmacy in order to be a good partner to his wife. Children in the third stage are typically preteens or early teenagers and have now adopted the societal norms as their own, while they believe that people should behave appropriately in their communities. They recognize that there is no simple solution to moral dilemmas. In Kohlberg's study, per the example given, they accepted that he should steal the medicine and he was a good man for wanting to save her wife. They also reasoned that his intentions were good, that of saving the life of someone he loves. Fourth stage is about maintenance of the social order. The fourth stage of moral development is motivated by the preservation of social order. This means that the person is more concerned with obeying laws and social conventions because they are critical to the functioning of society. At this point, the individual's problem have spread beyond his personal circle of friends and family to include a larger range of people. This stage also includes the idea that there is a responsibility to uphold the law, and that disobeying the law is consequently morally wrong. The majority of adults stay at this stage. Regarding to the example about the man who stole drugs from a pharmacy, the man should not steal the medicine because it is against the law. And that is a pedagogical content knowledge framework of maintaining the social order. For the fifth stage, the formation of personal values that may differ from those of society is the emphasis of the post-conventional phase of moral growth. This perspective allows a person to disobey rules that are in line with his own values. At this point, a person sees traditional morality as useful for sustaining social order, but also as subject to change. The fifth stage of moral development is characterized by a focus on the social contract, in which the individual recognizes that laws reflect a majority's consensus, but that one can express opinions on whether a law should be changed through a democratic process in order to achieve the greatest good for the greatest number of people. In our example about the man who took medicine from a pharmacy, the man should steal the medicine for his wife because She is deathly ill, and the laws do not take the circumstances into account. In the fifth stage, members begin to consider what makes for a good society. They are able to step back and assess each situation as a whole, reflecting on what is good and just. Reflecting on the morals and ethics for their current community allows them to address inconsistencies in their values and attempt to fix what they do not agree with. A society that runs smoothly does not necessarily uphold their desired principles. This is one step ahead of stage 4, where the main goal is to keep a society functioning at all costs. So that is how social contract and individual rights is. Let's move into stage 6, which is about reliance on universal ethical principles. The universal ethical principles are the focus of the sixth stage of moral development. At this point, the individual relies on his own moral reasoning, which is founded on universal ethical principles that are investigated from many perspectives. And just laws should not be obeyed because the individual considers law to be valid only to the extent that they are founded on justice. Reasoning at this level may lead to a violation of the law, resulting in legal sanctions that may include incarceration. Few people extend their moral reasoning to include this next stage because of the personal hazards involved. Mahatma Gandhi and Nelson Mandela are two examples of people who work in this area on a regular basis. Going back to our example about a man who took drugs from a pharmacy, it is okay for the man to take the medication without paying, as objects or property are not as valuable as his wife's life. Sixth stage was developed when Kohlberg discovered that elected processes do not always result in fair outcomes. Individuals at the fifth stage of moral reasoning recognize the importance of protecting human rights while also resolving challenges in a democratic way. And fortunately, some majority votes resulted in regulations that actually hurt a minority group, leading to questions of an even higher level of reasoning. The sixth stage was created to acknowledge the use of justice in moral reasoning. Generally, universal morals and ethicals are used as a baseline for what is right and just. These are often abstract concepts that cannot be clearly defined, only outlined. Equality, justice, dignity, and respect are all ideas that form the basis of universal principles. Laws and rules are only effective if they support the universal principles which each person at this stage works to uphold. So how can we apply Kohlberg's theory in instructional materials? Consider where your student's personal growth falls on Kohlberg's 6 phases as an instructor to implement Kohlberg's theory in the classroom. Then, in order to create a positive and productive learning environment, strive for optimal moral character in accordance with Kohlberg's universal principles at level 6. Students in stage 1 conduct appropriately in order to avoid punishment. Students act in a way that we will win them awards at the second level. Children have begun to contemplate other people and their expectations by the third stage, which allows students to contribute to the drafting of a code of behavior in the classroom. Students will become responsible for the rules they design and obey, rather than passively accepting standards set by school officials or other authorities. Allow any disciplinary action to include a written self-evaluation. It doesn't have to be long, but it should allow the child to consider their own reasons for disobedience and devise a future solution. This type of action relates to Kohlberg's fourth stage of morality, in which people ponder the repercussions of their words and behaviors in order to contribute to the maintenance of order. Make time for role play, whether it's for a specific lesson or as a method of problem solving. Acting or observing situations through the eyes of others allows students to gain a better understanding of what is going on. This allows them to make decisions based on the commitment of the group rather than their own. They've also evolved to Kohlberg's sixth stage, where all of society's expectation must be taken into account. In the classroom, a short performance or scenario might assist students focus in making sure that everyone is active and engaged in learning.